Hello and welcome to another episode of the Book Tribe podcast, where we interview authors and those who help authors for their tips, insights and guidance for modern day writers. And today I'm thrilled to be joined by Beth, an award-winning novelist, master neurolinguistic programming practitioner, bit of a mouthful, and certified creativity coach for writers. Welcome, Beth.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Erica. This is so much fun.
I'm really excited. And just before we get started, I just wondered if you could qualify for our listeners what a master neurolinguistic programming practitioner actually is.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it is really helping people with change work, internal change work. First, very respectfully honoring what is, how we operate, how we think, our belief systems. And from there, helping us shift internally so that we can have the external life that we want. So it's very much like, it feels crass, but I feel like this toolkit helps me be like a mechanic in an engine and understand, oh, this connects to this and this is connected to that, and that all these parts together help the car run, help us internally achieve our goals, have a happy life. So understanding this linguistic, so word-based understanding of helping people achieve their goals through listening, very careful listening, and also helping them shift how they perceive themselves and reality so that they can have the life they want. It's different from coaching, where coaching is very externally focused, and LP is very internally focused. So I have both of those toolkits, which allows me to really help the whole person.
Thank you for clarifying that. And I'm hoping that we can actually get more into that through our conversation today. But before we begin, we're going to do some bookish quickfire questions just to get to know you. Are you all right with that?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Awesome stuff. So if you could only read one book, and I know that's a really tough question, for the rest of your life, what book would that be?
You know, this is such a hard question. And a fiction, a novel came to mind, which I want to tell you about, and a nonfiction book came to mind. So the fiction book is The Eight by Catherine Neville. Came out, 20 years ago or something. And it is a novel based on a chess game. So it's really complicated. And I feel like that kind of book would really keep me busy. Both for the plot and enjoying the story, but also like, how did she do that? And how could I do that? So it's both a wonderful, fun adventure caper with time travel, which I adore. It's also, and dealing with historical issues and strong women main characters and secondary characters. It's based on a chess match, which just fascinates me. I'm not great at chess, but that would keep me busy. I'm pretty sure that would keep me busy. Yeah. And then the second book is a nonfiction book that it's called The Gene Keys, and it's by Richard Rudd, fellow British person, a writer, philosopher, spiritual thinker. And it's a collection of definitions, and it really invites you to reflect internally. And I really love it it's like over 1,000 pages, so that would keep me busy. And it's based on self-reflection and contemplation, which I think is very beautiful, and it would help me, guide me when I was lost and confused and upset about being on a desert island all by myself.
Great answer there, and well thought through actually. Mine, I was just going to have like a throwaway answer, like just a book that I love, but thinking about it, I'm just like, oh, think of it. So the second question is, what would you say is your literary guilty pleasure?
Well, all reading is good reading. Where I might feel a little bit guilty is staying up all night reading a novel, which has happened to me many, 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 many times. And as an adult, I've had to be careful. I run my own business. I've had to be careful not to fall into that trap too often, but it happens sometimes. And I would say that's the guilty part, not the reading. All reading is good reading, in my opinion.
I agree. In fact, I've been known to kind of sit, because working from home as well, sit in my office and read for an hour on my lunch break.
Good job.
And then like, just one more chapter. So the last question of our quickfire round is going to be, what's your favorite genre to read or write in, and why?
Oh my goodness. This is just huge, right? Because I read science fiction and fantasy of a lot of different types. I write science fiction and fantasy of varying kinds. So I love adventure stories set in fantastical places, whether it's in space, a spaceship, some made up fantastical world. It really transports me and lets me let go of the everyday of this world, of this lovely life I have. But I love the adventure and the high stakes. I was thinking, what is it about science fiction and fantasy I adore? It's often the high stakes that it's safe, right? Because I could never go out and fight a dragon except in my imagination as super high stakes, that kind of thing, or fly on a spaceship, or do a spacewalk. That sounds high stakes too.
No, I completely get it. And actually, I think part of I think my favorite genre is romance, and part of it I've recognized is that there's always something to overcome, and it could be a physical barrier, it could be a societal barrier, it could be, but there's always something that the person has to overcome, either internally or from external, and that's why I love romance so much. But anyway, that brings us on to very nicely our first question, which
Mhm.
is, what do you think makes a good sci-fi or fantasy novel? Is there a particular quality that you think makes them makes a good sci-fi or fantasy read?
I would say the best sci-fi fantasy stories are the ones where the characters feel real. So yes, and the world feels real. And of course, I teach this, so I have a lot of ideas about this. But one of the challenges writers have is their characters feel flat and their world feels flat, meaning no world is simple. Our world here, it's layers and layers and layers. And so thinking about that and putting that into your story, and including complexity, including contradictions, including flaws, and having real consequences for the character's behavior, for whatever is the logic of your story world, be it based in some kind of magic system or based in some far future science that isn't today's science, but still has a logic. It needs to hold together and it needs to have a history. So I often ask my writers, you need to understand who the character is before page one. They have to feel real. So they had a history, they had breakfast, they had something that happened 5 days ago that maybe upset them. They have a childhood, they have a past. Unless they don't have a past, but they usually, even like if they had amnesia, they still have a past. So that shows up in all kinds of ways. So that level of complexity needs to be present. And I can tell on page one if the writer has thought about those things. And so a good story is, in my opinion, people first, but people come from their world. So it's the relationship between understanding their world and how it shaped them. And of course, how the character is trying to act upon their world as well, how they want to shape their own world. So it's, a, and I know what I'm saying right now, it applies to all stories. It really does. And science fiction and fantasy has a double duty. The world has to feel real. And it feels real, in my opinion, because you've created a character that feels real and interacts with the world as if it's normal. And that is the special job that we have as science fiction and fantasy writers.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think some of the best fantasy novels and that I've read have been ones where I felt like I've just stepped into a world that's already spinning. That there has been a history, and there seems to be a direction that it's going in, even though things may change and whatever. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I have to agree. So if we're talking about authors stepping into kind of sci-fi and fantasy genres, kind of at the beginning of their journey as writers, are there common myths or misconceptions about writing sci-fi or fantasy that you find they kind of fall into, perhaps?
Well, some of the challenges I see people going through is they haven't really thought through, this is for fantasy, they haven't really thought through their magical system. Causes, consequences, cost. So I'll start with C. Causes, consequence, and cost. And I'm sure there's more. Um, all of those things are need to be thought through so that the author can think about also secondary effects. And yeah, there's so much there. It's one thing to write a wonderful adventure story with the all the interesting people that you want to people your world with. But if you don't have the magical system thought out and it's central to the story, then it's like a whole it's like a whole layer is missing from the world. So I would say devise a magical system that feels real to your story world and for your character. And so I would say it's not an easy thing. And maybe the misconception here is like, oh, I could just do what someone else has done. Sure, but make it real for your story. And if you are writing an homage, then be very loving toward that homage. Like take it and then make it your own somehow, which is gonna happen anyway. And put some effort into that, I would say.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think that's definitely true because I can imagine that a lot of authors coming in as new writers are actually people who have read fantasy books that they've loved, and they just perhaps want to rewrite it in a slightly different way, or so to be respectful of what where they're taking it from, and to just to pay homage in a respectful way is definitely important. So as someone who is helping fantasy and sci-fi authors in the writing, publishing, and marketing process, how might you characterize the market right now for those kinds of authors? Because is it kind of a bit busy right now?
I would say this all markets are a bit busy, what with self-publishing, and I'm self-published. I'm independently published. So I think there's room for everybody. I think there are trends, and there's always trends. So if you can write to the trend, go for it. If you can't write to the trend, do not despair. There is room for all of us. And readers are always looking for something new. So commit to your wonderful, quirky idea. Go for it. We want that. And, because I'm independent and I work mostly with independently published authors, I am very encouraging of all the fun, wacky ideas that people have. And they're like, they may be on the fringe, but that's okay because eventually that won't be the fringe anymore, probably. And you get to be an expert in that, and you get to learn marketing and where does your story fit amongst the stuff that's trending. It's okay. That comes and goes, right? Every trend is going to go away at some point, and who knows, at one point your story might be trending and you could catch that wave for a bit, but then the trend will go away. So, you're in this for the long haul, I hope, and learning the fundamentals of marketing is what's important, not whether or not the market is saturated. I mean, it's just going to get busier and busier. And our job is to find our audience. Our job isn't to worry about everybody else. Well, pay attention, but don't worry about it. If you keep going, you'll be working in the field and other people will have left it. So keep at it.
I think that's really valuable, actually, that advice and what you say there. So how do you feel that the market is perhaps creating either challenges or opportunities for authors? Because I know it's very busy, and there's a lot happening in the book market at the moment. But do you think there's any kind of challenges or opportunities that you kind of see happening at the moment?
Sure. The first one top of mind, obviously, is AI and all the ChatGPT and the image creators. And I see some authors I know. I have a science fiction romance author friend, Carrie Crespi, and she's been using Midjourney to create her characters and use them as inspiration. I know other authors have been using the ChatGPT tools for brainstorming. I've even used it for brainstorming. I think these tools, we need to understand what they are and how to use them. And that actually is an opportunity to expand, to have a bigger toolkit. And it's easy to get distracted or feel discouraged even. Like, oh, people are just going to take my job. And actually, I've talked to a lot of writers about this. I don't think our job as creative thinkers and storytellers is going away, because we have what those tools do not have. We have emotion, we have heart, we have bodies, we can feel. And that is what readers read for, right? They read for emotion, they read for the emotional experience. So our job is to become really good at making that happen. These tools, they can't make it happen. They can mimic. That's all they're doing. They're just mimicking, and they are pulling from what's out in the world. And there are real ethical concerns, and it's not going away. So the challenge there is to find a way to work with these tools that feel right for you, and that feel ethical to you. But ignoring them, you're gonna miss that whole. It's like ignoring the internet. Don't do that. You need to understand it.
No, absolutely. And I think yes, there are kind of the ethical concerns with AI, but the opportunity it presents in terms of speeding processes up, and with kind of perhaps even, and I don't know what you think to this, but helping to overcome those creative roadblocks. So, the friend that you have that uses it to kind of just create almost like straw man characters is perhaps something that authors can take away as like a how to use AI.
Absolutely. And she writes sci-fi romance with aliens and shifters. So a little bit of crossover sci-fi and fantasy. And she loves creating her blue-skinned, 3-armed, cat-like, right? Humanoid. Also, there are tools out there of various kinds that will help you with brainstorming, will help you with creating even an outline based on your own prompts and based on your accepted ideas of story outlining. It's a great place to begin. I personally find those a little off-putting but I've internalized story structure. I know how to generate ideas, and I like that process. But for people who are stuck and they're like, I have a blank page, I don't even know where to begin, then these tools can help you create maybe a rough sketch, a rough idea, and also teach you, hopefully, story structure. So you understand, oh, this is kind of openings, kind of middles, kind of ends. Okay, that gives me some ideas. Oh, but I don't like it exactly. But now I have something to work with and change around. So I could totally see how that would be helpful. And I have concerns that it may not help every writer. It's going to depend on the kind of writer you are. And I'm very much a discovery writer. I love the first drafting process. I do not want a machine touching that. It wouldn't be my story. It would be their story, and it's not going to write my story for me. So I love that beginning stage. But I use tools for brainstorming, but I don't use the Chat GPT tools. I use the Cthulhu deck. Have you heard of the Cthulhu deck?
No, I have not.
Oh my God. Plug from the Cthulhu cards. I wish I had. It is at Cthulhu.com, and there's 6 categories. And so here's a gray deck, and this one is elements. So you go to it with a question, and it's designed for creative people. This is habitat. So say you were like, what kind of habitat, what kind of people? This one, orange, I forget what this is. Texture. So texture would be about the environment, or it could be all kinds of things. Relationships. And then there's an app as well. This is relationships. So you have to go to it with a question. And it comes with all kinds of questions you can ask. So I like this deck because it's highly visual. Every card, it's hard to show here, chlorophyll, for example, it has a word, it has an image, and all this art was commissioned and all the artists were paid, which is very nice, and a little description just to get your thoughts going. So, and it's an app, and I was using it today. Ask it a question, it gives me a prompt, and it gets your brain going in another direction. So I do use prompts, and I have been using prompts for years and years and years. I used to use tarot and other types of divination cards, which are really fun. What's great about this deck is it was specifically designed to throw in new ideas so that your brain could go off in new directions. Because to be creative, we need new input, new ideas, not the same old, same old. We need something new, and our brains are hungry for something new. That's why I was saying your quirky story, go for it. So humanity needs all of our wonderful, wacky, weird stories, because the same old is wonderful, comforting. Just like I had mac and cheese for lunch today. You can't beat mac and cheese, but I made it. It was homemade. It was gluten-free. I made it at home. I put my own little spin on it. And so I guess, readers want the same but different. So how can you add your own quirk to it, your own spice, your own personality, the things that you care about, put those into your story.
And I just wondered if perhaps then, are there specific challenges for kind of sci-fi and fantasy authors that perhaps authors from other genres don't have the same challenges, if that makes sense?
Sure. Yes. So if you write a contemporary or even in a historical period that people know a lot about, you don't have to explain as much. If you were to say, the girl and her dog cross the road and two cars avoiding two cars, well, I don't have to explain to you what a road is, what a car is, what crossing the road means, what a dog is, right? Who a girl is. Like, there's all these cultural assumptions that we all take to the work. So if we're writing science fiction or fantasy, how much of that is going to be new? Maybe a lot. And our job is to ground the reader in what is familiar so we can share with them what is unfamiliar. And that is the double duty of these genres. Of course, if you're writing in a historical period that not a lot of people know about, same challenge. Or if you're writing a contemporary set in an environment that is unfamiliar to most people. But you'll notice there's a lot of, I don't know, I'm just going to take a cop show, because there's so many cop shows and police procedurals on television, novels. A lot of people are familiar. So one of the things that I did in my science fiction mystery series is I use the tropes of crime fiction and investigative story, and then overlaid that in a science fiction world set in a hotel casino. A lot of people have pictures in their mind of what a hotel casino is. I don't have to explain what the poker tables are, what the slot machines are, but then I can throw in all the new details. The show was taking place outside, and they had jetpacks, the acrobatic dancers. The singers are holographic singers. The food is from all around the planet and in this new combination. The power structure is set up in a way, I had to make reference to what we understood, but then I had to explain in the story what made it different. So it is double duty when we're doing science fiction and fantasy. We have to explain in an engaging way and at just the right moment what that new thing is through the perspective of a point of view character.
Yeah, no, I find that really interesting, because I think, when we're talking about even contemporary, the skills that are required for fantasy and for sci-fi are still required in other genres. And if you're writing a crime that's set in sci-fi, you still need some of those. So they are overlapping, really. But I think it's just the emphasis on the world building and the those kind of, as you say, those contextual elements is probably slightly more emphasized in sci-fi and fantasy. So for authors who are perhaps struggling with this process? Perhaps it's a new author, and they're struggling with this writing process. Perhaps they've got writer's block. What specific things might you recommend to kind of overcome that kind of roadblock?
Yes, I even wrote an ebook on this topic. I think it was my first published book, Overcome Writer's Block. So I have a lot of experience here, personal experience, as well as a lot of tools. So there's several things that I encourage writers to do. The simplest, I would say, is set a timer. And I often ask writers, what is the minimum amount of time that you could set your timer for and it would feel doable? You're like, I could totally do that. And for some people, it's 5 minutes. For some people, it's 30 minutes. But really, it's all about what's manageable to you and your life. And so set the timer for that. And then sit down with your writing, your notebook, your computer, your tablet, and dictation if you want, and just go for it. Just go for it. And here, all and everything is permissible. This is like first draft, blah, blah, blah. You can even type blah, blah, blah. I don't know what to say. And your job as a writer is to see what is inside, to listen to yourself, to feel and put name and word to whatever is going on. And you're a writer, you want to write. So talk about that. If you're stuck, I want to write, but I'm stuck. I don't know what to say. And then you can throw in some really fabulous power tools questions, which is the first one is what if? What if I did this? Or what if I did that? Or what if my character said this or did that? Or what if I go over here and get inspiration over there? What if I right? So it's all about the what if. The what if is like the best power tool question in fiction, in storytelling, in my opinion. There's probably others. The other question I ask myself when I'm stuck and I'm in this free writing mode is I start with the prompt. What I really want to say is, and then I listen to myself. Like, what's the most outlandish thing that wants to come out here? What I really want to say is blah, 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 blah. Like maybe what comes out is the thing you've been holding in, the angry thing, the upset thing, the curious thing, the wondering thing, the taboo thing. What I really want to say is, and just keep playing with those too. You probably during your whole time, you probably excavate like a master archaeologist, some really amazing things that are going on inside of you. And if that was all you did every day for a month, I'm sure you would get closer to your work in progress, unlock it, find answers, even maybe come up with some amazing radical solutions you hadn't even thought of. So writers write, that's what we do. So the more you can get yourself to the page, the more you can get into the habit and create these very protected, safe places where you set the timer for 5 minutes or 15 or 20 or 30, whatever works for you. And you make it manageable. You don't make it like a should. You don't crack the whip. You just like bring yourself gently to the page. And it is really about being gentle and compassionate and curious to see what is inside. As you can tell, I do this for a living.
Well, that for me is that actually, this doesn't have to be an overly complicated, overly committed thing that authors have to do, but actually, new authors or seasoned authors, but actually it can just be, that gentle exercise. And I imagine as well that it's almost like, exercising and stretching a muscle. You have to kind of build the creativity, you have to exercise the creativity muscle.
Absolutely. It is akin exactly to exercise and to any habit. Like when I was younger, brushing my teeth was really hard. And then finally, I had a friend whose sister was a dentist, and he was so matter of fact about it. He would just go and brush his teeth. And I was like, wow, he is so matter of fact. Maybe I can adopt that matter of fact attitude, and it doesn't have to be this huge, weird, cranky, I'm cranky, when we're kids and our parents tell us to brush our teeth. And same with writing. When I first met my husband, who was my critique partner at the time, he was so joyful about coming to the page. He was like, oh, this is so much fun. He has such joy at it. And I was like, oh, I don't need to be so twisted up inside. There is another way to approach my fiction. I understood journal writing, I understood free writing, but coming to fiction with that lighter attitude, I had it modeled for me. So that's the other piece, I guess, here too, is like, yeah, it can be easy. It can be gentle. It could be like just a gentle workout. It doesn't have to be hard. And you will develop the muscle. You will develop the capacity, because today's 5 minutes might be challenging, but next week, 5 minutes will probably become 10 minutes, because you're like, oh, 10 minutes, totally. And I notice this with exercise as well. Same thing, right? At first it's hard, and then it becomes easier. And then you can start to push the edge a little bit further and a little bit further, but always gently. Our bodies are naturally attuned to this kind of strengthening. It's fabulous. And don't go too far. Don't blow out all your muscles, right? Don't go all the way on that first day. Actually hold back a little bit if you haven't been writing. And I practice all of this, because if I have 2 or 3 days off from writing, I come back to it gently. And that's okay.
Yeah, and you kind of picked up on something which I was going to ask, which was, what if someone has all the ideas? They've got too many ideas. Where do they even start to kind of put pen to paper?
Yes. Oh my goodness. This is such a challenge for so many of us, myself included. I face this pretty much every day, because not only do I have the ideas, but I have all the other things that I'm doing, and I'm making a movie, and I'm, the weekly podcast, and 2 novels, well, 1 novel and 1 script, and not to mention managing 2 teams of people. Okay. So where do I begin? I begin with, people call it a mind dump, a brain dump, just the list, the blah of things to do. My journaling often turns into this list of things to do. And I give myself permission to write multiple lists. It's just my way. It's like my brain needs to see it written a few times before it like gets onto the calendar or whatever. Now, specifically with writing, give your ideas a place to land. So what does that look like for you? Does that mean, like, I use Scrivener for fiction? So if I'm inside a Scrivener for my book, I even have a section that says other ideas. I don't want to leave the story world I'm in, but I want permission. I want my ideas to land. I want them to be planted like little seeds in the garden. So I have a little bucket for them inside of Scrivener. And at some later date, I could always go and drop them somewhere else. I also have a folder in my fiction folder on my computer. Same thing. It says other ideas, and it's random Word documents that I label what they are, and I just open it and put it in there. And so I have a lot of different ways to collect ideas, because I'm working on multiple platforms. I have a paper journal. I have notes on my phone. I have the voice memos. I'll dictate. I have a friend I exchange ideas with a lot, so I'll share them with her, and my husband, also a writer, I'll share with him. So in my opinion, make places for these ideas to land, and know where they are. And they can be as like mine. You just heard multitude of things. Some writers will have a notebook that is just for new ideas. So whatever you do, the whole thing is catcher's mitt, right? You want to just, the ball is coming. That's a baseball reference for those in the UK. You want to catch the ball. You want to say yes, thank you to the muse, and write it down. Even if that means, so something I do when I'm writing or editing is I have a journal that lives inside of Scrivener that is for that whole, like, where am I at? What am I doing? And I'm talking to myself. But it's also where all the ideas arrive first. Sometimes it's okay. And then now I'm in the editing process, and now it's called an editing journal. Same thing. It's really to let the muse know you are open for business. Yes, please. And thank you. And so your job is just like to pay attention and write them down. And you are also the captain of the ship here. You are deciding what idea is front and priority, and everything else is back burner, secondary, or even tertiary, or I don't know what fourth is over there. Quaternary? I don't know. Yes. And another analogy, sorry for a new analogy, but I often feel like the ideas are like airplanes on the runway. Each airplane gets its turn on the runway, taking off one at a time, very orderly, very safe. So what is right there front and center and needs your full attention or most of your attention? Everything else has to line up back there, right? Take your turn. So it's a constant negotiation. It is not a one and done. This is every day we're having, all my creative parts are talking and we're deciding and choosing every day. And that's okay. That's part of the creative life.
Sort of kind of reaching out to kind of other author friends. So how would you best advise people in terms of building networks or supportive networks for themselves, to help them with this process? What are the kind of the best ways to collaborate and work alongside others?
That's such a great question, because my writing career really took a leap from, I guess I would say, amateur to professional when I joined a writing organization, a professionally oriented writing organization, where at that time I had 2 manuscripts under my belt and so not even published, nothing. And I walk into a room, a literal room, not online, and I got to hear stories of people who are bestsellers and published and querying and doing all the things. So whatever you can do to be in a real room or a virtual room of professionally oriented writers, if that's your goal, So every part of the world, from my own experience, has writers who are either professionally or loosely connected, and libraries are a great place to begin. Um, Schools, colleges, universities, and I know here in California we have the California Writers Club, which is a group of people who get together on a regular basis, and they have governing bodies and they have chapters. So there are writing organizations like this all over. I know the Western world, and in other countries, cultural centers are a great place for these. Like I was teaching in Saudi Arabia, and there's a beautiful cultural center in Eastern Saudi Arabia that was a great hub for people interested in arts and culture and all kinds of things, sciences, crafts. It was amazing. So where are the book clubs? Where are the art galleries? Where are the libraries? Where are the coffee shops? These are great places to start asking. I am a writer. I want to work with other writers. Who do you know? Where you could start to even create your own group if you can't find one. And then online, there are just so many writing teachers and coaches like myself, so many organizations that often exist just online. And I recently joined a screenwriters group, and I met them on Twitter. And now they have a Discord, and now we have a monthly Zoom. And then there was another group that I created, and I joined that. And then I find out about other groups. So one thing leads to another. And if you can't find one, maybe then you need to create one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's unlikely you won't find something, but even so, as you say, it can be, something really quite niche and special to you and what you're trying to do. So you never know, you might need to go ahead and create one of your own. So let's talk about your is it a 12-month mastermind program that you run?
Yes.
Do you mind telling people what that is and how it works?
Sure. Absolutely. So that is a 12-month group mastermind program. We meet on Zoom twice a month, and people can upgrade and get one-on-one developmental editing and coaching from me. And it's specifically for people who have finished their first draft. So it can be a messy first draft. That's okay. They have finished their first draft, and now they're like, wow, I did this amazing thing. And I'm like, yes, you did this amazing thing. And they're like, now what do I do? I'm like, all right, let's walk you through the processes of how do you take a messy first draft and turn that into something that you're ready to publish, pitch, share with beta readers, move on, even publish. I have people in the group who've gone through and then they publish their book and they keep going, they keep writing and publishing. So it really is for people who are looking at writing as a career. Doesn't mean it's a full-time career, but it's a career. And they're looking to develop the craft and the artistry of how do you really write a story readers will just fall in love with, like they fall into and they don't even know they're reading. And that's art and craft. So we teach the art and craft of that. We also teach marketing and how do you find your readers? How do you navigate self-publishing? Well, we've had a few people come in who want to query. So we have tools and templates on that. And it works as a small group that's very tightly knit, that we critique each other's work. So you also get experience having your work critiqued and critiquing others, which is a fabulous way to learn. So we're really working in this little small group model. And the people in the group have been there a while, a long time. It's a great place to come and put attention on your fiction because everyone has busy lives. And it is a 12-month commitment. So if that seems too much, I have other options for folks who want to work on a shorter term. And some people join the group and just work with me one-on-one. Some people love the group and work with me one-on-one. So there's options for folks. And it is with a focus on science fiction and fantasy, since that's what I write and what I'm super experienced in. But we don't exclude the other genres. There's always romance in my work. My husband is a thriller writer. I obviously write crime fiction, so we know a lot about crime, thriller, and suspense. And I've written 5 short romances, and my husband uses romance in his work as well. So, and he also is a horror writer. That's the one genre I would say I'm not an expert in. He can do it, but I would say that we aren't specialists in it in the group. So I pretty much cover all the bases. The only thing we don't do children's books. But we do YA and up because I write YA and adult fiction. And we don't do nonfiction, obviously, poetry, memoir, all of that. So, and it's really designed for people who are looking for a small community where they can get a lot of handholding, a lot of support, and really learn the art and craft of bringing their manuscript up to that polished level so they can publish it.
Sounds great. It sounds like a really holistic kind of, take the pieces that work for you, dependent on kind of the goal really that they're looking at achieving. So that sounds great. If someone is interested in learning more or finding out where they can sign up, where do they go to do that?
Yes, so the best place to begin is my website, and that's bethbarany.com, and I assume that will be in the show notes. There's a tab there for Work With Me where you can go in depth and look at the editing program and see if it's right for you. And there's a way to just reach out to me directly, email me, set up a conversation. We can talk about it, and it's really it's for people who want that level of commitment and are ready to really play and also experiment. I guess those are very similar. Yeah.
And you've also got a podcast as well. Do you want to kind of share what
Sure.
that podcast is focused on?
Absolutely. Thanks for asking. It's called How to Write the Future. And it is designed for science fiction and fantasy writers because I offer a lot of tips for writers. And it's also for anyone who cares about the future because we are future focused. And it's for writers who care also about creating positive, optimistic visions in their work. Because I want to put the emphasis on how fiction is actually helping us think differently about ourselves. And we are culture makers, and we are remaking the world through our stories. So I have the audacious goal of talking about the remaking of humanity through our stories and kind of thinking really big and really broad about that, as well as getting in the weeds about craft and art. I interview futurists and people who are writing stories about the future, positive futures, like with Throughtopia, which is a kind of, it's not a utopia, it's not a dystopia, it's a Throughtopia. So I've interviewed some of those authors, and I've talked to futurists and foresight practitioners, as well as other science fiction and fantasy writers. It's a mixture of art and craft and coaching, as well as like, what are other people doing? What other cool things are people doing? And that is anywhere you find your podcast, How to Write the Future.
It sounds fascinating, and I really do want to listen to that myself, but we're running out of time. So my last question for you, Beth, is if you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice, what would that be?
Yeah, I was thinking about this ahead of time because, of course, I could give different advice depending on what stage you are at. However, there is one piece of advice that applies to every stage. And in my opinion, that is persistence. Don't give up. Don't give up on your dream. Don't give up on your book. Keep keep going and keep connecting to your creative self and to your co-hosts and peers and writers, and be in relationship, right, with yourself and with community, and keep growing that. That was like 3 pieces of advice, wasn't it? Okay. Don't give up.
Fine.
Take it as one.
It's been wonderful speaking with you. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners have as well. It's been a wonderful experience.
Oh, thank you so much, Erica, for having me. And I invite any conversation from folks who want to chat with me. And I know there's also a freebie that we're offering. Is that right? So folks want to dive deeper into their world building. I offer a world building workbook for fiction writers, which is this wonderful PDF that you can use to enhance diving into your world building.
Wonderful stuff. Thank you so much, Beth.
Thank you, Erica.